Luka Hocevar, welcome to the first hour. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm very excited to be here.
We've been hanging out all weekend.
I know. Listen, I don't even know where it's going to go. That's what's the best. Like, where are we going with this?
It's just a surprise.
Okay, even better. I love surprises.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so this is going to be our 5th or 6th episode. So obviously it's going to evolve over time, but I've been really excited to have this conversation with you, first of all, because you're basically my brother. We've become so close over the last few years. And also, I respect you as a person, as a coach, as a business owner, and I always just revel in the opportunity to learn from you. I'm just a sponge whenever I'm around you because you have so much knowledge and experience. And so I just always want to be able to learn from you in all of the ways.
Well, thank you, first of all.
Yeah.
I'm very much so like, oh, thank you so much. but you know, like it's funny because we could probably record a lot of our conversations not like this. And we're talking about all type. I mean, even if I just look at today and yesterday, it's a roller coaster of the things that we talk about.
Right. It's business. And yesterday we were talking about the different types of conditioning and
as a life, and then the back end of I would say marketing stuff.
Yes.
And I mean, it's all over the place, but in a good way, all over the place. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are so many things we could go into, but today I want to focus mostly on your habits and your disciplines and how you have gotten to where you are, because you have such a unique story. And I know you've talked a little bit about your history and your origins and all the different things, but what is also so interesting is how you constantly stay at the top of your game. I mean, 10 minutes ago, you posted on IG about just how the concept of mastery is a verb, right? And it's not just a place that you arrive at. And I think that's something that I personally also believe, where it's, yes, we're not just an expert and now we know everything. It's what we know now and we're just continuously learning.
And it is, I mean, you know, hopefully you get to a place where you understand that the more you learn, the dumber you feel. Mm-hmm. It's this weird dichotomy, right? Because I would say I feel very confident in my knowledge in my craft. And let's just say that, you know, my craft in coaching. But the deeper that you go, it's like it just opens up more doors. That if you're seeking this, if you're seeking it for the right reasons, which to me is, you want to learn so that you can use that, you know, to help people, right? Mm-hmm. In the craft of what we do, it's a service-based industry, but it's like, I want to learn because I'm curious, so that, you know, I can be better and then serve, and then it continues. It just keeps going, you know, and is and I think that that's a great way to grow, because I did have a part in time of life where it was just like, I gotta know everything,
right? You
know, and it was actually stressful. Like I was going to every seminar, but the way that I was approaching it was like, you can't reach that, you know, you can't reach that I know it all. It's always evolving, and so having this, you know, going back to like a childlike curiosity around your craft and you know, going down rabbit holes, I think it becomes way more fun, to be honest, you know, rather than a stress and anxiety. It becomes fun.
Well, how I observe the way that you go about learning, it's not an ego thing. You're not just trying to add a bunch of certification letters and PhDs after your name. You are learning all of these things all the time for practical application, to be able to help your clients, to be able to grow your business, to be able to share knowledge with other coaches and trainers to help them grow in their craft. So it's so much more than just trying to feed an ego. You're not doing that at all. You're putting things out, you're putting it right back out into the world, because when I think about myself as a trainer, I always am going to use, so if I'm going to YouTube, like front foot elevated sprinter's lunge, right? I'll type that into YouTube and then I'll write Luka Hocevar. So if you look at my YouTube search history, it's all whatever I'm trying to learn and Luka Hocevar, because you're a content machine with all things fitness, with all things business, but it's also bite-sized information. You have longer form things as well, but I also am able to be like, okay, here's what I need to learn. Perfect. Now I can take this and apply this to my own clients and my community.
But here's the secret. Like,
ooh, we love those.
Oh yeah. The secret is, and I've been presenting on this year when I speak at a lot of conferences. Is when I learn things, the best way for me to ingrain that knowledge is apply it as soon as possible. Meaning, like, I'm going to do the thing, I'm going to use it in my training. And then the next day, as soon as I'm coaching, I'm using it.
Cool.
But then I'm going to, as soon as I use it, I reflect on the thing that I used. And then I'm going to create some content around it. Meaning, usually it's going to be obviously video format if it's showing exercises and something that's a lot more visual. Whether it's a short video, a long video, something on IG. So yes, I mean, there is a content strategy, but it really does help me. Like, it's this fast feedback loop, right? Like, I don't know, let's say I go through an online course over the weekend and I take a bunch of notes, like the stuff that pops out at me. I'm like, oh, okay, I like this. I understood this, but like, this is new. Let's implement it. I come in on Monday and I might train a rugby team and then some NFL guys. And then I'm going to have my own training session. Then I'm going to train some semi-private clients and run a group. But I'm going to use the thing that I learned like that day, right? And I'm going to get some type of feedback from it. Like, wow, that did work. That cue really worked well. That exercise was really good for that person that has no cartilage in the knee or whatever, right? Like, and then as soon as I can, I'm going to shoot like some type of content or video around it. And if it's a podcast and it's some type of principle of marketing or life or whatever, I'm going to share it in a story if possible, because it's helping somebody else, but it's helping me, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm distilling the knowledge and trying to articulate it better. Maybe the first time I do it, it's not coming out as right. good as I'd want to, but down the line, I do it again and it's just a clearer message. So I feel like that's the process of, and I can't remember who said this, right? But it's like the greatest way of learning is to teach, because you have to be able to help somebody understand what you're saying, and I would say with time, as you slowly, hopefully shed the ego, and doing it in a way where I'm like, hey, can a 6-year-old understand this, mm-hmm. right? Because I think that, to really understand stuff, you have to be able to distill it into a simple way. And I was that guy too, where it's like you're talking to clients and going like, well, this method builds sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. It's like Jenny's looking at me like, okay.
Just glazed over.
Versus like, hey, this is a great way to build lean muscle. And like you
mm-hmm.
said, you wanted to build up your glutes. So this is going to be a great way to do that, right?
It's so true, because if people can't understand it, they're not going to be able to implement it. One of the things that you do so many things well, but one of the things that I love seeing you do and learning from you is those external cues, where when you're coaching a group of people or you have semi-private clients and you're teaching them how to do something by saying, here's what this move is similar to. One that always comes to mind is if you're trying to tighten your lats, if you're doing like a deadlift or something, you're squeezing an orange in your armpits. Because everyone can visualize what that looks like. Everyone can visualize, okay, what would that feel like if I were to squeeze an orange in my armpits? And that's just a really cool way that you can make it feel relatable and also help people move better and get better results that way.
And here's what's cool too. Like, I think there's a huge benefit and value of, going around and like seeing how people coach, right? And I did that for forever. I still do. If I go to different places and cities, I love seeing people coach, because they might say one thing and I'm like, what did you say? Oh man, like I didn't think about that. That's cool, mm-hmm. right? And then it's like, and then take that, put it into your toolbox,
yep.
right? So if you understand the principles, and then you have all these tools that you can add to it. But I do feel that, with coaching, it's like over time, you just start thinking of, I think it's really beneficial to learn analogies and similes. Like I bought all these books on analogies and similes and mm-hmm. things like that, to start explaining to people like, hey, imagine if I'm pulling your head right now, like just pulling it up, right? And I want to see them do that, like this. Great, that's perfect. Okay, so when you're doing that lift, I just want you to think like somebody's pulling your head, or there's a string on the top of the crown of your head and it's being pulled to the ceiling. And for some people, like, boom, it works.
Right.
For others, it's like they're not getting it. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go in the toolbox and do it again. And eventually, what you hope to do is to just build this really, really, big set of tools. And you've heard kind of the analogy, right? If the only thing you had a hammer is everything looks like a nail. But I do feel like in coaching, you get a lot of that. Or, if you've only learned a narrow scope of things, then you try to solve the problem with just this narrow view. And to me, in coaching, the goal is always for the person to get better. Right. How I get them there you can get as creative as you want to be. And I think that's what's really, really cool. And the whole, never stop learning is, and be open to, even if you're really good, whatever the hell that means these days, right? But it's just like that you just stay open, and somebody, I don't know, maybe there's a super young coach and they figured some stuff out and they say something, you're like, man, that's super cool. Like, I'm going to use that, right? That you're, and to be able to, I think this is a big skill set that's worth developing, right? Is like to be able to have a communication with somebody and talk to somebody, and always think about like, what are they great at, right? And because now all of a sudden, now I'm looking for things, and imagine that, like, I don't know, been in the game for almost 20 years, and I'm like, oh, I've been coaching for 20 years, I had a gym for 17 years, like, I don't know all this stuff, and now I'm just blocking myself off. Or maybe this young coach has got a ton to learn, but there's certain things that they do, and I'm like, hey, what does this person do really well? Now I got a different focus, right? Rather than, because guess what? It's really easy to go, what don't do they do well? Oh, what are all the things that I can improve on them? Which, hey, great. But if you have that focus, you might be like, man, like, he articulates this so well. Or like, he's very good with showing visual things. He's great at mirroring. And then now everybody becomes somebody that you can learn from, right? Rather than being like, well, I'm the expert, I've done this for a long time. See, you just block yourself off to a lot of learning. And that whole idea of lifelong learning, and I think, by the way, I'm far from perfect, but I've been better these last, I would say, 5 years when I meet younger coaches as well. And like, wow, that's awesome. And same thing, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to implement it into the thing that I do. I'm going to try to coach it and then create content around it, and then deepen my knowledge. And for anybody that's like in the world of, well, anything really, if you're a marketer, if you're a coach, if you're a business owner, like that loop of, learn, apply, reflect, and then course correct, right? And then it's like repeat for forever. You know what I mean? Like if you can learn how to do that, and then I would say mesh it with content, because I feel that content, what it becomes is like, if you can educate your potential client / prospect, whatever it is that you do, and they're educated on this, they get value and it's something useful, they end up learning that like you might be, or very likely, the person for them to hire. Right. And I think that's where it becomes super cool, where, this whole idea around that, this is creation. When we shoot videos, when we do vlogs, when we do any of that stuff is, to me, is great, because, you can go to sleep, and whether it's 10 people that watch it, or 100 or thousands or a million, right? Like, you are helping in some way, move them forward a little bit.
And that can be used not just in fitness and coaching. That concept can be taken in any industry. And that is what I think that's so interesting about how you go about that. And I know that you have kind of specific schedules for how you study. You're always studying something. You're always reading something. And I do want to get into that eventually, to be able to teach people, like, how do you continually learn and how do you keep that mindset? But you have such an interesting origin with everything. And just quick story. So the other day I was walking to get my nails done, and there's a big market on the side, and I'm walking by, and there's a girl with a camera crew there, and she stops me and she said, hey, can I interview you for Overheard LA? Have you heard of Overheard LA? They have like Overheard, I think, New York, and in different cities. It's basically just, people will send them funny things that they've overheard in their city. So it'll just be like a text, like overheard at Erewhon in West Hollywood, and just like absurd things. And then they also do these interviews where they just ask people on the street these random questions. And so she starts asking me all of these random absurd questions. And then one of them was, what is one crime that you think you could get away with? And I had to sit there for a second. I'm like, okay, let me think about this. Because I get nervous jaywalking, right? Like I'm nervous to get in trouble. I'm nervous to make people feel bad. Like a life of crime is just not something that I would be good at. I would probably be at the bottom of the barrel. Like,
so you're saying that you can't be my partner in crime. All right.
I mean, I guess I would cheer you on, like, but it's just not in my skill set. So what I ended up saying was like, I'd probably be great being Robin Hood, right? Steal from the rich to give to the poor. She's like, oh God. I'm like, well, truly, like I'd be so bad at it. But I know that you've said to me before and just on different podcasts and in your own work that you're from Slovenia and you started going down this life of crime. And you had, I don't know if it was one pivotal moment or a series of moments where you realized this is not for me. But your life is so different now. And I just think that's so interesting that you had this kind of transformation. And Dennis and I, after I had that conversation with the girl or got interviewed, I was like, I'm so bad at crime in general. But it is kind of nice to have someone in your phone book, right? Like, if there ever is that moment where I need to call someone and be like, yo, I need some help with something, right? I feel like you're that person for me.
I mean, it's, this is interesting. And as far as I actually love talking about it in a sense of, I truly believe, anybody can change, whether they will, but you can. And when I look back, I mean, I was, my teenage years, I don't know. It's like I lived like this three-way life. I'd show up in school a little bit, just enough. But, basketball was a huge part of my life from honestly like age 11 for me. But, at about 13 or 14, I would start getting a lot of trouble. And it'd be, dumb, it'd be like dumb stuff from going to the store and stealing stuff. But then it just kind of, all those things kind of accelerated to doing more and worse. And probably around 15 is when I also started selling drugs. And it was just like, we could dive down like, why. And I had to kind of go back and explore all these things.
Yeah.
When you were doing
I was curious about that because I know that some people can't choose the situations that they are born into and the things that happen in their life. And so sometimes people choose a certain lifestyle or have a certain lifestyle because of the situations they're trying to survive. Other people, it becomes more of a choice. And I don't know where I fully stand on that, but like, that's interesting to me.
Yeah,
what's your experience with that?
Well, when I look back and I did a lot of, when I was in my early 30s, and we can go there too later, but I did a lot of therapy, I joined Wake Up Warrior, had a lot of stuff that I was finally like, I need help. And I, went down the rabbit hole of peeling the onion and figuring myself out and improving myself in certain ways.
And are you still in Slovenia at this point or are you in the
No,
US?
this was already in the US.
Okay.
I just got divorced. Did a lot of dumb things, but the point there is, which we'll get back to, is that you have, if there's something to fix, you got to fix it or it's going to keep popping up, right? I call this like have you ever heard of the karmic loop? Mm-mm. All right, so I'll give you, always love this analogy, right? So let's say you have an event happen in your life, right? And usually something that you messed up, right? And this event happens and then you go into the pit. Right, and the pit is like a bad place. Like, I don't know whether it's shame, guilt, whatever else it may be. But in the pit, there's a lesson. Okay, there's also a lesson to be learned. Now, if you learn a lesson, you go back up to the next level. Right, you improve yourself, and you look back down at the old problem, and you go like, oh wow, that's not even a problem anymore, right? But if you don't, because if something bad happens, and let's say we can use health as an issue, or for example. I do some dumb stuff, I get arrested, right? And all right, you get let out because you're a juvenile or whatever it may be. And then it's like, there's a lesson there. Are you going to learn the lesson? Or are you going to let time pass, right? And then that's if time passes, things get better. But you didn't learn the lesson. So then guess what? You keep doing dumb stuff, right? It repeats itself and then you stay in what I call the karmic loop, right? And so the reason that's important is because, I mentioned teenage years and then I mentioned early 30s. And, certain things I obviously overcame, other things I didn't. And so I made dumb mistakes later on in life. And then I had to be like, all right, I need help, which is a really hard thing to do for men, right? But with the crime stuff, I went back and looked at it and said, why did I do those things? And you start learning about tribes. You start learning about things like not being enough. That was a big thing for me. I was the youngest of the kids, of my brothers, but also like we moved from Slovenia to London from like when I was 7 to 11 years old. Then my dad stayed there, kept working. We came back, which was like right after the war in Yugoslavia happened, because I was born in 81, which was still Yugoslavia. In 91, we had the war, became independent, and that's the whole thing. And thankfully, the war in Slovenia was like very short compared to Bosnia, Croatia, and all the other countries. Was way worse. But that means that like my dad's not around, and in that time, so imagine like the people I would hang around with, there were people that had the things that you wanted. It's like they had the money, they had the jewelry, they were cool, and those people tended to also be like, hey, they're in the drug game or they're in crime, right? So you now sometimes get these, I would say, figures where you're like, I want to be like that person, right? And two, like if you're like, hey, you want to be seen, because when I started playing ball too, like I was a short kid, scrawny, didn't get picked. I always tell the story of like, did you start playing basketball because you loved it? I'm like, I was like, no, I was like annoyed. I wasn't that good at it, but I was always like, oh, we got to pick this kid. You're always, so of course I'm like, I want to be seen. I want to be like, respected. And, I would say in crime too, when you do something, you steal something, you make money, and it's like, now you feel, now, by the way, this is a false ego and confidence, right? Like, but it gives you feel like you have some semblance of control. As Tony Robbins said this well, and I really kind of understood that. Like if I pull a gun out and, point it at somebody, I feel in control, right? But is that true control? No, it's not, right? Like I'm using this to persuade somebody by force. But the thing is as a kid, you don't really understand these things, right? And when you get some of that, you're like, oh, I like this. I don't know whether it's like, I like the money, or I like the respect, or like the, hey, these people used to bully me, but now I'm the bully, and so I would look back and go, those were the things that pull you in. And then you have a tribe. Now, whether that tribe is, making you necessarily better, you do feel a part of something. Right. And so that was kind of the, I would say, what got me in. And then when you're in, it's like, it can be a snowball effect. Now, at the same time, I'm playing basketball. So, when I say like basketball, like really kind of changed my life and saved my life, like it's as true as it gets. And, because when I was about 17 years old, and, my coach would know, like, it's not like you're dumb, the streets talk, people talk. And he was like, hey, look, I know what you're doing. Like, dude, this only goes like two ways. It's like, it doesn't finish. And I had a lot of, like, my coach, like, I had a lot of respect for him. Loved him, he really cared for me. So like there was that bond, true. And, and I was kind of like, yeah, don't worry about it, whatever. Right. But and one, it made me think. Number two is that year, like there's a lot of stuff that started happening, police involved, recordings of my phone calls with this person that was doing stuff with. I mean, I could go really deep into these things, but it was definitely, and two, like, it's like, when you get a gun pulled on you, and it was just a lot of crazy scenarios.
Was it kind of like a culmination of all these things, or was there one moment? Okay.
No, not one. No, definitely not one moment. Actually, I think that a lot of people think that sometimes it's like a thing happens and you're like, all right, I'm going to change my life.
That's the final straw.
But most of the time it's not. It's like something happens, you're like, I'm going to change. But, the holds of habits, you totally said, habits from the get-go, they're tough. It's a process. It's definitely a process.
Especially if it's tied into a sense of belonging and self-worth and
for sure.
And the money and all of the things.
Yeah, there's just a lot of underlying things. It's I know this will not be the greatest analogy, but I guess the framework behind it will. Like, it's just like if you say to somebody, hey, all you got to do is go to sleep, sleep more, go to sleep earlier, as if that's one habit. But now you got to eat dinner before, you got to put the kids to sleep different. Like there's like 9 different habits or 10 different habits that constitute you going to sleep earlier, right? It's like me changing some things in that life was connected to so many things, people, environments, things that were, that made me feel enough or meaningful, not great connections, but, to let go of that was a lot. Now, what it did do is that, I went to, when we were 17, when I was 17, our team went to America to do EIBC, which is kind of like the top, high school basketball camp, and it was basically like let's test ourselves against the U.S. players and make it an experience. And, for me, it was like I was already kind of playing semi-pro ball in Division II. And that, you know, to me, I was like, I'm going to be a pro ball player. But it was a great experience. I never thought about like, oh, I'm going to go to college here. But one of the coaches that was running my team, he was like, hey, have you ever thought about going to college in the States? I was like, not really, you know, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm making money on the streets. I'm playing ball. Like, no, not really. Great dude, Wayne Jones. But he kept in touch with me. So like that year afterwards is like where the universe was definitely testing me and going like, you better, you know, it's a whisper, but it became a scream because so many different, I would say, things happened. And he kept emailing with me, and he was just like, hey, next year, why don't you come up to EIBC, stay with me in Denver for 2 weeks. We'll train, and we'll go to 2 camps back to back. And at the beginning, you know, I was just kind of like, no. But then as the year went by, like I remember emailing back and like, hey, man, like, you know what? I'm going to do that. Because it was just, you know, I was like, let me go do this thing and see what's up. So I go there. I have no idea how college recruiting works, by the way, because this is like July, right?
Okay.
There's no scholarships in July left.
Right.
But I don't really know that. I play really well. And then I get a bunch of like, when I say offers, it's like, you can't get a scholarship. So like, hey, you can walk on, but it was, you know, Quinnipiac, Delaware State, Western Michigan, like D1 schools. But I also, you know, they're all like 50 grand a year plus, or, I mean, they're all very expensive. So I'm like, oh man, I can't do that. And there's a guy that said, look, I used to play at a JUCO upstate and then coach. And then he was with a really high level D1 junior college. He said like, you know, you can't get a full ride because they just don't have the money, but you know, you can get a bunch of stuff paid and you'll play like you're really, really good. So I came, you know, back from that and like had this kind of like, you know, come home moment in a sense of like, man, what do I do? Because I wanted to continue playing ball. This was a way of me you know, going to school, but it was the big thing was too, like, you know, going into a different environment and getting away from a lot of stuff that was happening in a negative way. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was where I kind of did make a kind of pretty quick decision and go like, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I came back like, I don't know, August 3rd. Wow. I go to the embassy to start working on a visa, and like in a little over a month, boom, I was out to the U.S. So it was like even a lot of people were kind of a little like, oh shit, you're doing this, you know? Yeah. And I mean, you know, long story short, it ended up being the best decision. But it also like, you know, I'd come home in the summers and still do dumb stuff, you know, because I was still connected to that. But I mean, to me, it was just definitely like a confirmation that I made the right choice because, you know, sometimes, you know, changing an environments trigger behaviors, and it can shift stuff. And there's actually a really powerful story. I can't remember where I read it, but it may have been Atomic Habits. I don't know if you ever heard a story about like of the Vietnam War and heroin and the amount of people that were addicted to heroin.
I've heard generally, but I don't know what story specifically.
So it was, you know, I might get this wrong, but it was an incredible amount of the soldiers that basically would take heroin in Vietnam, like 30, 40, 50%. I mean, maybe even more. And somebody can fact check me on this. But what happened though, because it was a couple of things, super cheap, readily available. Everybody else was doing it. Trauma. So you had to, I'm like, hey, I want to try to avoid thinking about all this, you know, craziness. And so it was all the kind of ingredients in the pot for forming a habit and addiction, right? Yeah. But when people came back, it was a very small percentage of people that continued. I think it was like 3%, 5%. Really? It was very, very low. And, you know, it was like, well, how come? But it was this change of environment. It wasn't readily available. You weren't around the same people. You weren't around that trauma, right? And, you know, that's why, like, for instance, if you go in any type of addiction counseling, it's like, don't go back to where you were, into the environments that helped you create these habits, right? So that, I think, for me was one of those things that it was a shock to the system, but broke some of those patterns.
That happened to me too when in eating disorder recovery. There were so many, I mean, habits and places that I would go and things that I would do that were so ingrained in me and a part of the disordered habits that I had. And so a conscious effort needed to be made to change my environment, to be able to go to the places that I was scared of going to and all of these things. And eventually it did make a big difference because if you keep your environment the same, the habits, nothing's going to change. It's just so easy to fall back into it.
Yeah. You're basically what you're doing is, I mean, it's like you're making something just significantly more difficult. You know, it's that whole idea of, I mean, in nutrition, right? Kitchen makeover.
Right.
It's like, oh man, I have a hard time with sweets, but then you have sweets everywhere. So it's they're so readily available that as soon as there's some emotion, you know, that pops up and you're like, oh, let me calm myself down,
Yes.
you know? And, but if you had to go to the store and get them, you might, but it's a 15, 20 minute trip to the store, 15, 20 minutes back. Like you might do it like 1 out of 15 times.
But that's like great.
Yeah, correct. I'm like, no problem. So you made, you know, it's always like make the good habit easier to do and make the, you know, quote unquote bad habit harder to do, right? Give it more steps. And so if you remove yourself from an environment that's triggering you to have certain behaviors, and then you create all these attachments and habit loops and things like that, you know, like you are just making it so difficult on yourself. So pretty much that's what I did. Now, you know, I would love to say like, yeah, then everything just went away in a fairy tale, but it doesn't. Like you have to consciously work on things. And, you know, it's kind of like we're talking about nutrition and crime, but like the underlying things, there really, you know, there really is a lot of these, I'll say principles that attach all these things together, right? Because I had attachment to what like gave me value when I was, it's like, okay, well, I'm doing this and then I'm getting money and I have more money than you. So I'm, you know, and you feel like better, but it's not, I would say, the right thing. All right. It's pretty toxic. It creates a toxic loop of, you know, what makes you feel enough. Right. And I think, you know, looking back, a lot of these things helped me become a better coach. And I promise I'll connect them, right? But,
I love it.
Because later on, and you know, I would say I completely kind of went away from that life when I got out of college. It was kind of like when I got out of college and started playing pro basketball, I was like completely done. And part of it too for me was like you know, my college sweetheart who I later married, there was kind of like this moment of, you know, where she said something that was like, you're not gonna like do this, like, you know, continue doing this, you know. And I had this kind of like, no, like I can't, you know, like I don't, this is not who I want to be. And that's a very, very powerful question. That like now I can intentionally ask myself this. Back then it wasn't very conscious, but it was like, you know, who do you want to become? I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's like, who do you want to become? Right? If you don't like who you are, and there's many times where, you know, I'd look at myself in the mirror and be like, I don't like who I am. Like nobody, I would say, unless you're a sociopath, right? Like you stop and go, hey, like I really, you know, I love hurting people. It makes me feel like good. No, like you don't, but there's other things driving you. So that question of like, who do I want to become? It either, you know, it's like always also connected to this, like collecting role models, right? Like who are role models? And maybe it's different attributes of different people.
Sure.
You know, wow, I really want to be like this person. He's very kind, but he's also firm and, you know, respected, but he's very kind to people. Okay, he's a philanthropist. Wow, like that person's built an incredible business. So you're starting to collect these role models. And I did that a lot through, you know, reading was a big thing for me.
Right.
We come back to that. But, you know, if you put together, it's almost like the Transformers, right? Like different attributes, and you build this like Megatron of like who you want to become. Right. I think that's not a bad idea, you know, and it's like a GPS. Okay, you are here. Maybe that's far away, point B, but all I want to know is like move forward, take this right turn, take this left turn. Oh shit, I got lost a little bit, but like the GPS recalibrates because I know where I want to go, right? So I think it's a powerful thing, not just like I want to make XYZ money, but to me it was like, you know, collecting role models and hunting for skill sets, right? Who do I want to become? What are the things that I need to learn to get there? And that really kind of helped me, I guess, on that GPS along the way. But that would, you know, but I tell this story because you really can make a full-blown turnaround in life. And I've made it a number of times. It's not the only time. And going back to that, like, you know, you do have to learn the lesson in the pit, you know, and ideally, I would say one of the best things, the most powerful things is to have people in your life that, you know, help you go like, hey, you're messing up. You know, like
hold you accountable.
Hold you accountable to it. That, you know, where there's a love and respect, but it's also a toughness and a firmness. Because, I mean, does somebody really love me if like you're doing crazy dumb stuff, and I just let you do it, I don't know. You know, I would say no, right? But it's one of the hardest things for people to do is have tough, crucial conversations, to have conflict. You know, I think that part is even more challenging today than it's ever been. It's like, I don't want to have conflict. I'm going to be passive aggressive. I'm going to, you know.
Right. But being able to be objective enough and open enough to hearing feedback and not take it personally that you are a bad person or you're bad at your job or whatever it is. And I think that also speaks to having people around you that you trust, because if there's a group of people that you trust that's giving you this feedback, it's like, okay, maybe I should take this into consideration.
You make a very good point on, like, you know, you might have done something bad, but it doesn't mean that you are bad. Yeah. I struggle with this a long time. And let me fast forward, you know, when I said I went to therapy, it's like, I was married, I cheated, did a lot of dumb stuff, burn a lot of things to the ground. I think too, personally, because I didn't believe that I deserved them. And that's when I went and I was like, I need help, you know, went into therapy, went into wake up work, like made a very, very big conscious effort on, I want to figure out why I continue doing certain dumb things in my life, right? Best thing I ever did. But cause I had a lot of shame. And shame was like, I am bad, you know, and that's not a healthy thing. No. You know, when you want to change, it actually kind of can keep you in a loop, versus guilt. Guilt can actually be good, right? Because it's like, guilt helps you be like, I don't want to do that anymore, right? I'm not going to behave that way anymore. And one of the things for anybody that's watching or listening to this, because I love resources, you know, and I mean, I've read like, I don't know, 1,400 books or whatever, but there's certain things that stand out, or I want to shine a light on them that were very, very helpful for me in my life at that point in time. So Debbie Ford, there was a book initially that I read from her. It's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which is excellent. But then there was a follow-up book that I read, Why Good People Do Bad Things. And it's a lot of things clicked for me, you know. It's like, oh, that doesn't mean that like they're bad. Like I'm not a bad person. I did bad things. Here's why I may have done those things, but I can change that, you know. And then kind of like realizing the difference between guilt and shame. And another excellent book. When I say excellent, I mean like honestly, like if you take it to heart, it can be like somewhat life changing. Is Byron Katie's Loving What Is. Okay. Phenomenal. And actually, let me throw in another one, because this is a bundle of this was like a legitimate 3-month period where I like went through these books and notes, studied, had a bunch of homework that I had to do with it. It was Gay Hendricks' The Big Leap, which talks a lot about like, you know, glass ceilings and like
upper limit. Is that one? Yeah.
Yeah. And those help, but then obviously, you know, having a therapist that was helping me kind of realize some things, but then take those things and put them into action again, you know, following this, like, who do I want to become? You know, and it's like, I had screensavers, and in my journal, it'd be like the first page is always, you know, who do I want to become? Because it did make me make these intentional, conscious decisions. And it's like certain habits are hard to break, but I kept doing them and I kept going through it. And I had a point that I wanted to make, and I lost my train of thought. But I promise you, it'll come back.
It'll come back.
So that kind of square of like, you know, unconscious incompetence, right? Like you don't know what you're doing, but the thing that you're doing is not helping you get where you want to go. That's unconscious incompetence, right? Then step 2 of habit change is like conscious incompetence. You're like, oh shit, awareness. I'm doing this dumb thing. This is not good. Right? Then level 3 is it's conscious competence. Like you have to really be mindful and have reminders and try to, you know, create environments to help you do this. And then step 4 is like unconscious competence. Like I'm doing the right things unconsciously. And you kind of want to take, you know, many of your different habits kind of through that loop. But for me, it was like a lot of unconscious incompetence, right? Like I'm behaving certain ways. It's just what I'm doing, you know, whether it was nature, nurture, trauma from my past. You know, step 1 is awareness, right? Awareness. I love this saying, awareness precedes change. And awareness can come from, I mean, I've gotten awareness from, you know, reading a book from somebody I really respect. It's like, oh, hold on, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Eek, you know, or a mentor, like even my coach, you know, we had some I mean, honestly, I felt like some of the conversations we had were definitely life-changing for me, right? Where he brought some awareness to me. He was just like, dude, I love you. Like, but, you know, here's and then firm, tough, hard to hear stuff, right? And, you know, it created awareness enough to like, I was like, oh, whoa, I'm doing these things. Like, who I want to become is not attached to this stuff. Like, it doesn't end well. And then, you know, it's like really hard work to just have conscious competence. And that's where, you know, why do people hire, you know, coaches for the guidance, the next step, the knowledge, but the accountability, ideally to be in an environment that's more conducive to doing, you know, that new behavior. And, you know, every part of life, you've got this stuff, you know, so that's why I love behavior change, and why I would say that's when I really dove into it, by the way, is like after I hired a therapist, after I did a lot of dumb stuff, I got divorced, is when, and I was really, really good at the training stuff, X's and O's of training and nutrition. I mean, I could geek out all day. I mean, I still can, but like I would geek out all day long, but it really made me be like, you know, why am I doing these things that are not good for me? And it made me have so much more compassion and empathy for clients, because I can tell you 10 plus years ago, I would judge. Like, why are you doing these? Like, why are you eating like this?
Right.
You know, why are you not taking care of yourself? You're uncommitted to this process. And I had to go through a shit show in my own life to go like, damn, like here I am judging this person because I have my fitness and nutrition in check, but I have all this other stuff that like is not in check. It's horrible, right? So I'm struggling significantly in just a different area of life than they are. All right.
Being able to empathize with clients, I think, makes coaches exponentially better, because like you were saying, so many people can easily judge them for not having a habit in place or a discipline in place that I have. Well, this is so easy for me.
Yeah.
How is this not easy for you? Just be more compliant. Do the things that I tell you to do. But a lot of people have barriers that we don't experience perhaps in fitness or nutrition. But like you were saying, we both have gone through a lot of different things in other areas that I think has helped us develop this empathy, which then we can relate to people on a deeper level, even if it's not the exact same thing. It's understanding the struggle and how to work through it to create habits that lead us to that person that we want to be.
It's exactly that, because, you know, and I really don't know if I could have been as good of a coach without that, right? Because once you get this understanding and you're like, damn, like that person could judge me so easily the way I've judged them, but just about this. And, you know, and take whatever you want. Take, and I'll stay in the fitness realm of like a coach, you know, that is horrible with money management and finances, right? But it's like, okay, nutrition, training, money, finance. But the underlying behavior change, the principles are very similar, right? So then it's more about like, okay, how do I help them move along this GPS to where, you know, to who they want to become, and with obviously the skill sets and experiences that I had, maybe even another area of life. Because yes, this is my expertise, but underlyingly, you know, we're kind of doing the same thing, right? Whatever area of life you tell me, you go like, hey, listen, I want to become better at marketing and I want to grow my business. Cool. Like you are here, you know, on the GPS, boop, boop, you know, like this is where I want to go. And unfortunately, it's not like a straight line. It's usually like, you know, you get to somewhere and there's a roadblock and it redirects you, and sometimes you got to go back. I mean, but either way, if you have this compass, you know, and, you know, call point B on the GPS, a compass. A compass to me is like, all right, direction. Okay. And direction, it might be, I mean, I think what's important is values. But again, values, identity. Identity to me is like who you want to become. It's so you have a path, you know, and as if you've ever been, like I've, you know, done a lot of, especially when I was younger, go into the forest, have your compass, you know, what's north. If you ever see the needle, you know, it's not straight. It goes like this, you know. But so that's kind of how life is. Like you get a little bit off track, but if you know where the compass is pointing, you know, was what I was saying about earlier, like collecting role models, knowing, you know, your values, your identity, like where you want to go, who you want to become. Okay, cool. I got off track, but I know where I need to go.
I love that compass analogy so much, because we both work with lots of people in the fitness industry, and the idea of needing to be perfect, to never have a day off. If you have one meal that's outside the scope of what you were planning on, it just is this on again, off again, shame inducing. We've talked about shame, and there's just so much pressure on that perfection. But even when you're moving in the direction of north, it's okay if it goes side to side just a little bit. As long as you're still continuing to move forward in that general direction, you're going to make progress.
And I would even say it's healthy.
Yeah.
You know, because, and look, you have, you know, people that are more disciplined, some that are a little less disciplined. But to me, it's like, what do you do the majority of the time? You know, is that like that?
Agreed.
I mean, 80% is the majority of the time. Like I read a ton of studies that when people, you know, just if they went from doing it 10 to 20% of the time and they did it 50 to 60 over the course of a year, you're losing 12, 15 pounds, getting healthier, better blood work, right? Now, does that mean that you should not strive to do, you know, better and be 80, 90%? No, you should, but you shouldn't beat yourself up and shame yourself for, you know, I don't know, I was 10% compliant last year, and then this year I'm 60 or 50% compliant. That's significant improvement, right?
Well, as a coach, that to me is combining together empathy, the understanding that it's not going to be perfect, and also the accountability of knowing, yes, we can strive for greatness and we can continually improve, and I'm going to hold you accountable to the goals that you have, while also with the lens of understanding that we are human beings and it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, and you want to. So this is, I mean, maybe some people, if you're very A-type, like, you know, myself, like, ever heard of Dan Sullivan's? He calls it the gap and the gain.
I don't think so.
The gap, you know, I fell into this a lot too. When, you know, you're striving to achieve things, whether it's making more money, getting fitter, and then you get there, and then you already, it's like, okay, this is, you know, I'm making 100 grand. Okay, I want to make 250. And you just keep pushing that kind of goal. So it's like the horizon, like it never gets there. So you always feel this. That's called the gap. You're living in a gap all the time. Like you're improving, but you're always anxious. I'm comparing myself to this person. They're more fit than me. Their life is better. They make more. So like I'm just in a constant state of anxiety, but because I never look back to see what I achieve. And that's the gain, right? And the gain is, hold on, where was I 6 months ago? Wow, I wasn't even working out. I'm getting like 2 to 3 sessions a week, every week on average. Every morning, you know, I have a smoothie. Before that, I had a coffee and 2 donuts and whatever. Like, that's the gain, right? And the goal is to not be living too much in either, right? If you're just like, oh, I remember what I used to do, you know, and you don't strive. And actually, Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, I'm pretty sure he calls it positive anxiety. It's like appreciate and look at all the things that you've achieved in your life, but also strive for more, right? And that kind of, that intersection, if you drew the 2 circles, is like a positive anxiety, right?
That's so interesting. I mean, before we started chatting officially, we were talking about fear and how I hate the feeling of like the jump scare. I get startled very easily. I hate watching scary movies. Like I don't know if it's a genetic thing, a personality thing, whatever it is. I just don't like that feeling. However, what we were saying is that it's having a little bit of fear in certain situations is important. And it doesn't need to be something that we completely avoid because it can save our life. It can help us with drive and motivation. And so it's not like I hate all types of fear, but do not try and take me to a haunted house.
Everybody that's listening is like, startle Kelsey.
If you do, I swear
it'll go viral.
I'm cutting you off.
It's like, it's gonna go viral. But it's, you know what, I think that there's another concept, and I like bringing these things up because I hope that something that somebody hears is like, ooh, you know, it clicks, because it's stuff like that click for me, is this concept of difficult, easy. So difficult, you know, and this is like a crazy analogy, right? But if I give you a shovel and I'm like, hey, go outside and like smash into the concrete, you know, and make a hole, like that's difficult, but it doesn't get you anywhere. It's like doing anything, right? And sometimes people do that. You know, an MMA fighter going into the cage might be difficult, easy. Now, only because they've done it before. So they're comfortable with the difficulty. Like for me, training hard, it's difficult, easy. Like, and I'll punish myself sometimes in a sense of like, I'm going to push and challenge myself, but I've done it a lot, you know.
Do you mean because it starts difficult, but it's an easy habit for you to keep?
It's something that I've done before.
Gotcha.
So even though it is very challenging from the outside world, if somebody's like, man, like, wow, like you're pushing yourself like crazy. It is difficult, but I've done it before. So there's a comfort in that difficulty. Now, what might be difficult? Difficult for an MMA fighter, right, is like getting more recovery. Or for me, it might be, I say yes too much. So it's like being like, hey, boundaries. No, that's difficult. So everybody's got, now for somebody, difficult might be, hey, push yourself a little more, like see where your limit is, right? Everybody's is different, but we all tend to, kind of like lean towards the difficult easy. It's like, I'm comfortable in this difficulty here, right? Whereas like for me, it's like one of the ways I used to avoid, when I pre-therapy and stuff is like work. I would bury like problems or feelings in work or training, right? And that would become the sedation technique, right? And people have a lot of ways to sedate. It could be food, it could be social media, it could be sex, drugs, alcohol. There's a lot of ways to like numb down emotions and kind of go through life. And that could be, it's like, oh, this is a difficult thing, but difficult easy. So I always try to guide people, not tell them, but like have, people help trip over their own truth. Just like I hope that other coaches for me do the same thing. Sometimes ask me a question, I'm like, damn it. Yeah, I'm doing the difficult, easy thing. Like, here's the hard thing to do. You need to have this tough conversation. You need to nip this in the bud. And like, that is, I think, the things that help us kind of get to the next level, and again, concepts are important, because if you're a person that's, if you look back and like you're doing much better, but you feel crappy, right? That means you got to live in the gap some more, right? You got to start writing down your wins. Right. There's people that, all they've ever, and I used to be this person too, right? You're driven by, fear, not being broke. You're always kind of like running away from things, and not just writing down your wins. Like, so one of the strategies that for most people actually that, come and coach with me is like, they're always beating themselves up. I'm like, listen, I need you to write 3 wins for today. And it could be like, hey, I haven't seen Kelsey in a while, went and got coffee. That was awesome. Win. Right? Hey, I got a workout in. It was only 40 minutes, but that's a win. Cool. Awesome. I got 40 grams of protein with 1 meal. That's a win. Just acknowledge your wins, right? So that you can start building up your self-esteem. Because, and I know I've said this on a lot of shows, but like if I repeat this a million times, I'm perfectly fine with it, because
someone else hasn't heard it.
I want to brainwash people with this idea that like it is true. Self-esteem to me is like if you do the thing that you said you're going to do, you put a credit in your bank account, your self-esteem bank account. If you don't, it's a debit, and if you constantly are like, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to go and do a workout, and you snooze, right? Debit, and if you have enough debits, you go bankrupt in self-esteem. And then it becomes challenging because you stop believing yourself, right? And the solution to get out of that is not to, hey, New Year's resolution, I'm going to work out 7 days a week. And it's actually to do the thing that that you can do, right? It's almost too easy, right? Like, hey, I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk. Of course I can do that. Okay, cool. Then do it. Right. And then you do that for 4 days in a row. It's like, what? I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk. And then you go for a walk. You're like, I feel like running a little bit. So you run for 10 minutes. Right. But the thing is that you're putting some stuff into that, into the credits of the self-esteem, and you want to start building them up to where they surpass those debits. And if you've done enough of those, I feel like you build enough confidence that, people can tell you like, hey, you suck. You're not a good coach. It's like, okay. You have enough self-esteem to like not, to not, that's
certain things roll off of you.
Correct. It's like you're like, no, that's not true. And I think that's a very, very important thing, because we live in a world now where it's very much so, try to do something extremely hard, maybe too hard for you right now, right? And you fall off, and you do it again, and you fall off. And then you start believing like, man, I'm just not made to, like, I can't change. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it's like, no, it's just the dose isn't the right dose for you right now.
Right.
And everybody's dose is different. And everybody's dose in different areas is different. And I think that's where it's helpful to have an outside eye, have somebody that's been there, done that, is doing it to guide you along the way. And I mean, you could do, we could be talking about anything right now. Like, I don't know, you want to be better at YouTube, you want to be better at generating leads, you want to be better at coaching, you want to be better at improving your health and fitness. Like, it starts with these principles that are habit/behavior change principles, right?
And that can go, like you were saying, in any field, any direction, even just personal growth. So we've talked about a little about the origins, and then you opened a gym, And now you have been running that for 17 years. Well, you started a gym in Slovenia, then you opened one in Renton, Washington. If you're ever in either of those places, you have to go to Vigor Ground. That is Luka's gym. It's incredible. It's revolutionary. And the way that you run your group classes and you coach teams, it's like nothing I've ever seen.
Thank you, first of all.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know what's it's so interesting when we started this conversation, and I said that, like, you know, when you get good at stuff and you keep learning, and then you feel like you kind of suck. Like, I'm in that phase right now in quite a few areas, and one of them is the gym, because like there's and like I'm very transparent. Like I always want to be transparent because I feel like it's the right thing for this industry or any industry to for people to know either, you know, what it takes to. I think the more transparent that any person can be, coach, gym owner, you know, if somebody looks up to them, like that's what's fair, because otherwise you kind of paint this picture of, you know, bullshit that's not true. So
100%. I think it's so important to, and it's not like you have to overshare things that you totally don't feel comfortable doing, but an honesty of, it's tough sometimes, right? Like, did you ever have a moment where you're like, I don't know if coaching or owning a gym or any of the other things that you're doing, did you ever have a moment where you're like, I don't know if this is it for me?
The owning a gym one, for sure.
Yeah.
Quite a few times. The coaching, I will say that you know, I made a decision, I think, quite a long time ago. And I was like, this is the thing I want to do, and I want to be the best at it, you know, and I've never let go of that. But there's a lot of things. I mean, to this day, I have days I get up and I'm like, oh. I mean, even when I've been here, you know, we've shared conversations. It's like, I'll get up and it's like 3 emails, and it might be a lawyer thing. And you're like, oh my God, you know, it's just stressing out about it.
There's so much stuff behind the scenes that is hard.
So much. And what I wanted to say about that, like, you know, feeling like, you know, I'm not even good at certain things. Like, it's true. So I think that we do some things exceptionally well. Then there's things that we do really well. And then there's things that, like, we're good at, and there's things that we suck at, straight up, you know. And the better that you get and the higher that you essentially kind of go in business, like, you hit this new level and you're like, oh, we don't even do this well. And I can admit it, you know, and because the only way to, you know, it's that awareness. It's like, it's unconscious incompetence, you know, and it's like, you know, the systems for this, we need to improve. But guess what? For me to have that awareness, I now have the possibility of actually growing, right? But it's a tough realization. And I think that, you know, what I do think about entrepreneurship, and I'm a huge fan of small business. Like, I mean, I will carry the flag for small business all day. And like, it really is a personal development journey, because you become the bottleneck many times, you know, and it's a really tough realization to go, like, I have been the bottleneck here, and I got to either, you know, remove myself, or somebody else can do it better than me, or I have to let go. Like, these are all like personal development things. But you know what? I think it's a very kind of powerful thing to get to this acceptance of, like, you know, you keep growing, and you're like, oh my God, I suck at this. And then it's like, all right, you know, am I going to get better at this? Is this my wheelhouse? Or, you know, do I find somebody that's way better to do it?
I think that's an important thing to think about. Like, what are the things that I should improve on to be better at whatever my craft is? And also figuring out, okay, this is not within the scope of what I need to be doing. So you either outsource it, you drop it completely, whatever that is. I mean, because you do so much.
Yeah, and that's actually the phase I'm in now, is like, what do you know, what's my genius? What is the things that I love doing that I want to continue to get better at? Like, you know, that whole who do I want to become question. And then things that, like, you know, I ought not to be doing, things I hate, things I suck at. Now, this is a tough one, because sometimes the things that, you know, you're not good at, like, you should get better at them, you know.
For sure.
Meaning, if you're a small business owner, you know, not knowing how to do marketing and sales and outsourcing right off the bat is not a smart thing to do. Like, you want to get really good at it to a certain degree, and then maybe once you're really good at it, hire other people, right? And I say that because I've had people go like, oh, I hate this and I suck at this, I'm going to outsource all this stuff. And I'm like, actually, you know, this is one if you want to do this, like you have to get good at it. It just is part of the game.
It is. And I think there's, as an entrepreneur, Dennis and I have talked about this so many times, and I think it served us well. And certainly there are areas that we need to grow within this too. But as an entrepreneur, being able to have a pulse on all of the different areas of the business and know, maybe you don't know all of the ins and outs of how one specific system works, but having a general idea of how it works is really important, because if you just outsource right away, it is so easy to not understand your business in general. It's harder to understand how to keep improving. It's way easier to be taken advantage of. And yes. There are few things that boil my blood more than being taken advantage of. And so being an entrepreneur, we have to understand all of the different elements. And once we do, then we can outsource.
Yes, because it is juggling a lot of hats, right? And I think that, once you get to space, I think also that, when you say I do a lot of things, I enjoy, like, it's a stimulus for me. I also think that, connecting the dots. So for example, let's take marketing and persuasion and influence, and, in the fitness industry, because a lot of times people in fitness will be like, well, I want to be ready coaching, so I'm just going to coach, and like, I don't care about that stuff. But what is marketing? I mean, it is exactly that. It's communication and it's persuasion, right? It's influence. Same thing with sales. But those things help you be a better coach.
Yes.
So, and it took me a little bit to, like, when I started really starting marketing, I was like, wow, like, this is actually, when I talk to clients, I'm doing this, but this is helping me do it better in an ethical way, because all I'm doing is like, hey, can I help them move forward? And if I'm a better communicator, if I can, kind of like, I'll say, press the right buttons, right? Because I understand psychology, and I understand, like, pain points, I understand desires. I can help them. It's not like, oh man, you're being sleazy. No. Like, I'm being better at helping them do the next thing.
Totally agree.
So that was the thing that was really kind of powerful to me. It was like connecting those dots. Or, when you start understanding systems, right? And the back end of putting things together, and you're like, well, I can apply this here too. Or you start understanding content. Like, so there's a lot of dots that you can connect that make you better at your thing.
And allow you to reach more people to change more lives, if that's a goal.
100%. And, but there is definitely, as you grow, it's going to be, what can I cut off so I can put more energy into the things that I'm, like, the most valuable and useful in, right? And again, then there's some ego there, like, letting go, control. And if, I've been in business for a long time, so I've had a lot of, I've messed up a lot of stuff, but definitely been taken advantage of a lot of times. So, you get these walls up where it's like, ooh, I don't want to be taken advantage of. So then you don't let things go, because you try to have more control.
Yeah.
And that is, it is like an infinite game. Simon Sinek has a book. It's called Infinite Game. And it really is. I think that when you kind of get that, because coming from a place, we both play basketball. It's like, there's 4 quarters, when the game's over, it's like there's a scoreboard and you win, and okay, maybe there's a next game and a championship. But in life and business, like, there is no end game, right? It's an infinite game, which is kind of cool. If you can accept that, it's kind of cool. So, hey, I grow, I hit a wall, I hit a ceiling, whether it's my own skill sets that need to improve, whether it's, a realization that I need to hand some things off. I need to grow maybe through that to go like, hey, I need to have less control here, and that's what's going to help us grow. And it's just never ending. It's not like a place that you get to. I used to believe this thing, like, there's when I make this and when I'm here, and then, you get there and it's like a thing.
Right.
Like, something happens. Arrival. It's like nothing happens. Yeah. It's like, like Kobe said on his last speech. I love that, because it's like one of my favorite things that he said. He was like, you think that the MVPs, and then when I got the championship, and like when I got another one, like that was the dream. But then when I got there, it was like, yeah, there's this, you have a good feeling, but then it's gone. And you actually hear stories about when people win gold medals, then after that, they're the most depressed. Like, they fall into this massive depression, because it's like, what now? Right? But when he said, when I realized that the work is the dream. You know, the journey is the dream. Like, that's profound, because it's like, it doesn't end. And like, should it? If you enjoy, are challenged by it, you know, you progress. And Tony Robbins talks about this a lot, you know, like, what is the kind of meaning of life? People say all these different, I think that one part of it for sure is expansion and progress, right? If I gave you everything you wanted, the body you wanted, the money, and it's just like, but you just stop growing, you stop being curious, you stop getting better, you stop being challenged, you would be depressed. You would probably fall into depression and have a problem with, you know, I would say purpose. And so I think that this idea of, you know, it should be easier. I've been doing it for a long. That's the other thing too. Like, I had moments where I was like, well, I've been doing this for a long time. Like, it should be smoother. It should be easier. It should stop being hard. And it's like, no.
I mean, that's the same thing with like nutrition. People are like, well, I've been eating my whole life. This should be easy, right? But it's hard.
But it's hard.
Yeah.
And the thing is acceptance, right? Like, if you accept that it's hard and go like, hey, you know what? It's hard. And here's the next step that I need to do. And the philosophy of the next step is so powerful. Whereas, like, if you know, especially if you have a big goal, and Gary Vee talks about clouds and dirt. I love that analogy. Like, your clouds are like this, the North Star, the compass that we talked about, right? And the dirt is the work. And if you focus too much on that big, you know, goal, it's so far away, it becomes overwhelming. Like, you're just riddled with anxiety. Like, oh my God, it's so far. You know, I've lost 5 pounds, but I want to lose 100. Oh my God. Right. But that will actually throw you off. Whereas, like, the next step is my checklist. What am I doing today? You know, and I really like this. That's another thing I talked about, you know, when we talked about who I want to become, because this connects to what I'm speaking about right now, this big goal, this compass, this direction that I want to go into. And you go like, okay, well, let's attach this to the watch and the wallet. You know, the watch and the wallet analogy just means, to me, is like, where are you putting your time, your watch, and then where are you putting your money? So where are you putting your time and energy, and where are you putting your money? Because to me, that shows what you're committed to, right? Those are actionable things. So, and I'll go all across the board, you know, kids, and you're like, I'm really committed to my kids. And it's like, okay, let's look at how much time you spend with them. And not like how much, what type of time. Is it really engaged, present, or are you watching TV on being on your phone, right? When I have somebody that goes like, Luka, like, this is what I'm committed to improving, right? I'm gonna get better at marketing. And I got to get my own, you know, I'm a gym owner, but I want to get my own fitness in check because it's fell off. I'm like, great, let's look at your schedule. Let's look at your calendar. I'm like, I don't see any time blocked out for improving marketing and applying marketing, right? It's not in your schedule. Well, I'll do it when, no. Like, if it's not there, it won't happen. You know, also, like, I see 2 workouts this week. Well, I don't put them in there. No, like, you have to attach the behaviors of the day, the next step, to who you want to become and what you want to achieve, right? And it's the same thing with the money, right? It's like the investment of, where do you invest your money, right? And it's like, well, you're going out 4 days a week, right? Okay, cool. That's costing a whole bunch. But you say that you want to get better at X, Y, Z. You know, are you doing a certification, a course, hiring a coach, a mentor, you know, buying 4 or 5 books and then going through those? Like, it's a tough thing. It really is, because you start going through your calendar and through your finances, which people hate to look at. And it's like, damn, I say I'm committed to this, but what my schedule and my wallet shows, I'm committed to this. Now, if you match those 2 things up and give it a year and like see where your life is, you know, it can be completely different. And the thing is, I think the powerful thing to do is if you struggle with that, like, hire a coach or find an environment that supports your behaviors, because environments trigger behaviors. I think it's the fastest thing. We just talked about, you know, me kind of cutting off the environment I was in and then completely shifting and moving. But if you get, you know, if you become a member of a gym that's a training gym and everybody there is committed to improving their health and fitness, that becomes the tribe. So as humans, we adhere to the standards of the tribe. Automatically, people will go like, oh wow, like you're going out and you're making your own breakfast, and then you have a meal delivery for lunch. That's awesome. I'm going to start having those standards as well, right? But if the community I go out with is like, oh, we party 5 days a week, we don't care, like, that becomes your standards. And you don't want to be pushed out of the tribe, so you adhere to those standards, So you can choose which environments you go into, and that can be such a, like, instead of you having to have conscious willpower to make these decisions, the environment can help you make those decisions, right?
Yeah. Speaking of watch and wallet and how you spend your time, how you spend your money in investing in whatever you want for your future, you do more reading and studying than anyone else I've ever met, probably, in trying to improve your craft. And you say you're just eternally curious, which is a super cool, I don't know if it's a personality trait or something that you've developed over time, but what does it look like? What is your kind of schedule and what are your habits around learning? Because when we went to your house, you have this beautifully color-coded set of bookshelves. And I know
shout out to my girlfriend, Waitia, for
Waitia.
She did that.
She is amazing. And I know she said, okay, if we're going to have all these books in the house, you got to let me make it look pretty.
That was pretty much her like non-negotiable.
Yes.
I was like, all right, babe, go ahead, do your thing.
And she did great. I mean, it's so cool. Like, it's so beautiful. But I know that's not even your entire set of books. You have a bunch at your gym as well. I've seen it all. So what does your schedule look like around whatever you're doing for continuing education and just overall?
So the reading has really become almost, I don't want to necessarily compare to this, but like brushing teeth, in a sense that like you wouldn't, not do it. So, and there has been seasons of my life on the readings. I always read. I would say for the last 15, 17 years, I've always been reading. And then there was just a phase where, I went 7 years where I read 100 plus books a year, like every year. And I made it a thing too, and I actually think it's not as important, but it did create a lot of habits. It was very much a number, like I'm going to read, 100 books. And then sometimes I'd read books that I wasn't super into, but I'd still read them.
Right.
I don't do that anymore. Now I feel like if I'm a third of the way through, quarter of the way through, and I'm like, I'm not really getting much out of it, I just stop reading, move forward. I might, go through the chapters. But the philosophy behind that, like, let me explain why I started reading so much. And it went back all the way back to, training. So when I was 13, I actually didn't mention, but my mom opened. So she'd work at the bank. She opened a gym with her friend. It's like this little small membership gym.
Cool.
It's where I think I got the bug for training, because it helped me build muscle and get stronger. And I had some really good mentors there. But what happened is that, like, because I got into training, I started reading training stuff. Now, back then, there was not nearly as much. But it was like I would read a thing, and then like I'd go like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and do this, And then I'd do it, and I'd get results afterwards. So it made me connect the dot, like, because I didn't enjoy, like in Slovenia, like you have to read Dostoevsky and, waiting for Godot and write essays, and you're like, oh, okay, I want to do this, right? But the training stuff, I was like, hey, like, what are the best athletes doing? Like, if I want to get faster and jump higher, oh, look, here's these Russian manuals that, for Harshansky and Zetsursky, let me read this stuff. And I connected the dot between, if I learn and study these people, like, I can apply and it can help me get better. And then, years later, Alan Cosgrove said it really well. He said, look, if you can read and study, you can learn anything that anybody's ever learned. And it was like, aha moment, so books just became, not only like, do you want, a skill set, but it's like, I really loved reading. So it was like about skill sets that I could learn, the knowledge. Somebody had 30 years of experience and they wrote a book, and I spent $15 to now get 30 years of this experience. Now,
amazing.
It's crazy, right? Like, when you think about it now, of course, yes, I have to apply it and get the wisdom of that, but it's like the biggest shortcut ever. And then I started, when we talked about collecting role models, that was such a big thing for me. Like, for instance, from a younger age, like Richard Branson was like an entrepreneurial hero, like, wow, like, look at what he's doing and the way he's doing it. And I would start reading biographies and, like, anything I could about his mindset and values and why he does the things that he does. And what I loved reading about was all these folks had like big failures, right? They had big like crashes in their lives. And it was like, what did they do when that happened? How did they overcome it? Like, that was really intriguing to me, because I had obviously a lot of my own obstacles and crashes in my own life. So that it became this, not just this escape, but this, curiosity wonderland. I felt like I had gotten the cheat code, and So I really attached those two things, and then I just kept going. And then what I started doing was, how can I, because reading is a skill set. So if you read more, you get better at reading. But then, I took Jim Quick's courses on how to read faster, not to just scan, but actually read faster. And
yeah, which is so fascinating.
It's incredible. I mean, because you can, whatever you're doing, you want to be obviously consciously taking the stuff in and not just not absorbing it.
Yeah, it's not just getting through the pages. It's being able to absorb it and then apply it.
Yes, and there was even and I can't remember it. Maybe we can put it in the show notes if I find it. But there was a site that I'd go to, and like you'd put, the average person reads about 180 to 200, 220 words per minute. But what you could do is you'd go there and say 260, and you would basically just give you stuff to read at 260 words a minute. And then I'd put it up to 280 and 3, and I'd do Jim's courses and do the lessons from him. And I mean, this was over a course of time,
sure.
But like, now I'm probably at about 500 words a minute. Wow. So I read, and it obviously took years
sure.
to get there, but so I could read faster. And but again, for me, it was just like, literally right now, give me a topic, right? Let's say if you said habits, and I say, okay, cool, look, you know what? Get James Clear's Atomic Habits, get BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits, and he's one of the top researchers. All right, get this book, get these 5 books. And it's like people that have studied this stuff their life, and they went and studied the people that studied it and put it in a format. Now you can go read those 5 books this month and take notes and apply it and have more knowledge about what works and what doesn't work than majority of people out there, because an unfortunate and sad thing is I think the average American reads less than a book a year, right? So it's all, for me, it was also like, how do I get the advantage, right? If I can go and buy this, I can study it, and then the next level would be like, okay, and this is how my brain works. Let's say I read a book and I was like, wow, that was so good. I'm going to find their blog, right? Because usually the blog is going to be written in snippets and for everybody. And then it's like, do they have a course? Do they have a certification?
Cool.
When is the live, when there's their live? So maybe now I can meet them. I'm going to send them an email. Hey, I just went through your book. This part of the book was really, really cool. Here's what I got from it. Just got your course, been going through that. I just want to say thank you. Hey, do you have any opportunities to get on a call? I'll pay you. The amount of times that I've done that is absurd, and the amount of people that were like, I mean, there was many people that were like, I'll get on a call with you for free. I'm like, what?
That's so cool. What a good idea.
And it was like, prominent names in writing, but they just weren't used to it. I would go up to, if there was somebody's stuff that I was following or doing, I'd always buy their stuff and then come up to them and say, hey, listen, I've gone through this. And I would say something specific, right? So it wouldn't be like, love your stuff. It'd be like, hey, I read through your book and like, man, chapter 3 blew my mind. So what I did from that was I applied this, and man, it was so profound. So just thank you for that. Hey, would love to, you probably got something already going on, but we'd love to take you to lunch, and I would I've been telling you, like, probably like 1 out of 3 was a yes. And then all of a sudden I'm having lunch with a coach or a speaker or an author. And of course the shortcut is, get their stuff, go to their seminar, buy their certification.
For sure.
And they'll be a lot more open to obviously also speaking with you and whatnot. But to me, that started becoming like this shortcut, right? It's like, well, this person has been in this game for forever, has wisdom, knowledge, experience. Like, let me learn from them. And at the beginning, maybe the only way I can learn from them is some writing, Elite FTS and T Nation. Maybe then it's a book, and maybe it's a course, and you just kind of go down that rabbit hole. But today, this phone right here, when you think about this, like, you could go, and I've tried to make it that a really big hub, YouTube or my podcast or this podcast, for free. Right? If you go back to the Watch and Wallet, you just take time and you go, I want to study how Luka does small group personal training, semi-private personal training, program design. I would say, I mean, I got 1,600 videos, but I don't know, like 100 of them are vlogs on that, right? I've read articles about it. I've, done, I don't know how many hours of podcasting on program design, that it's free, right? And that, when we started, it was like, that it wasn't available like this. And, subscriptions for $5 where you can learn anything. It's insane. So if you have the desire, right? If you have the desire and you have a compass, like, there's absolutely nothing that you cannot learn. Nothing. Like, whether it's programming and becoming a coder, or, you name it, you can do it. And it's it's available and affordable to anybody. And I just want to share this story because I do a lot of, or try to do as much work as possible with kids. That's kind of like my, I was a knucklehead. One of my kind of, I would say, purposeful missions is help kids not go down certain roads, because I think part of me was lucky too, because it could have gone very bad very quickly, in any time in my life. And so I'll go and speak to inner city schools and different programs. And I always, I try to start with the story so I get some connection, because sometimes it's like, man, what are you going to tell me? I'm like, all right, let me tell you my story a little bit. But then I go like, hey, what do you want to do? And you get all types of stuff. Like, it's like, I want to be a rapper. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I go back to that. I said, okay, cool. Listen, I said, what's the best song right now? Everybody knows the best song and the shows and this and that. I said, okay, cool. Give me some of the principles of marketing. Somebody tells me, I want to be a digital creator, digital marketer. Okay. Give me some principle of marketing. Like, I don't know. So, okay, cool. So you know all the top hits, you know this, you know that. But the thing you're telling me that you want, instead of listening to music for an hour, you could go on YouTube and get free stuff and learn how to become a marketer. Direct response marketing or branding or whatever else it may be. And I try to make that point. Like, you don't have like this restriction. I mean, and again, I'm not going to deny that there's people that have it much harder than others, by the way, right? Like,
of course.
And that goes to the extreme. Like, if you're born in India in a slum, I mean, like, there's certain things that you have no access to. But for many people, or say majority of people, everybody, people have Wi-Fi and they have phones and they have free knowledge available in this country. And it's like, it's your responsibility to be able to dedicate your time to the thing that you want to get better at. And this goes, I mean, again, like, maybe it's got nothing to do with business or your craft. And it's like, right. I want to improve my relationship. It's like, okay, cool. How much time are you spending on it? And it's like, very little. Okay, cool. Well, start doing date nights, start doing cool experiences that you block out every week and it becomes a non-negotiable, start cooking together at home. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do, but that if you just think about the lens of your life through that and go like, who do I want to become? Like, who are the role models that I want to collect? What are the skill sets that I want to hunt for? And then you go, how is this showing up in my calendar and my daily schedule? And that's what the next step for me is. The night before is like, do you know what your day is going to be like? You want to eat better? Don't leave it to chance. Like, know what you're going to have for breakfast, which cafe you're going to go to for lunch, know when you're going to do your workout, where, who with, like, plan it out. Without a path and a plan, the default, it becomes struggle. It becomes what you're doing now.
It's really cool to hear about how you set your life up like that, just continually learning, not only reading the books, not only listening to the podcast, but digging a level deeper into, okay, what else, what other information do they have out there? What courses, being able to connect with them in person, if that's a possibility. I mean, that just takes things to the next level. And going back to the things that you talked about at the beginning, where you're consuming this information, you're learning, and then right away, or essentially right away, you're applying it somehow in these different ways. And I think that you do a really amazing and unique job of first starting with the B2C, working with the people that come to your gym and working with them, helping them get stronger and get the results that they want to get and just feel better in life in general. And now, because you have accumulated so much knowledge, like you were saying, you create all of these free resources for other coaches, and you are one of my favorite places to go to and learn from. You're so incredibly generous with all of the things that you put out there. And I think if I were to plan your life and next steps and all the things, I'm like, you are the go-to person for people in the fitness industry. And I'm like, man, if Nike were to start building gyms across the world, they need to hire Luka Hocevar. I'm putting that out there, right? Like, to be able to build their programs and to be able to help them figure out how to set up culture, you're one of the top places to go at Vigor Ground, your gym in Renton. You bring in new people all the time, different courses and workshops and all these things to help coaches get better. And I'm sure you also just personally learn so much from that as well.
It's kind of like a I would say personal. Sometimes it's selfish, but it's really not. But that, that was a part of it when we were talking about how to get better at stuff. So I was speaking personally, but then when you look at, I have a group of coaches, my team, and I think we started probably about, I would say 12 years ago, where I started bringing people in. But back then, it's like I didn't have a name. I didn't have,
Sure.
we're doing well, but it's like it was so different. So I would call people up, and it wasn't like, hey, would you come do this thing for free? We would do in-staffs, and I'd say, hey, would you come in for a half a day if I pay you? I'd be like, what would you want?
Yeah.
And people would say different. And a lot of folks back then weren't even used to it. They're like, $2,500. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
They'd come in and they'd spend half a day with the team. And it would be coaches I looked up to, and I was like, man, they do great. This thing is great. So I'm learning, but then my whole team's learning, and then it's like they leave and like, hey, we got, I remember Martin Rooney coming in for the first time, and it was like the way we did warm-ups. And it was just like, it was a small thing. It seemed like a small thing. It was like, right. Hey, the guy, you're in the middle and there are people around you. Like, you should be in front of the class, and it should be like military, but in a way of like togetherness. And like the next day, all our warm-ups changed. We changed everything, right? There was a number of times where people would come in and be like, hey, what about this? Oh shit. Like, yeah, we could do that way better. But like the next day we're changing it. And as certifications came out, I would just hit people. I'll be like, hey, we got a pretty big gym. What would it take to come out and do certification here? We'll promote it, this, that, the other. Now with the years, it's like we've become kind of like the number one, educational hub in Seattle as far as like, we do anywhere from 8, 9 to 12 seminar certifications a year, which is unheard. I mean, it's unheard of in the country, but it really became, and we have relationships with certain certifications almost like every year. We're going to have PPSC and barbell rehab and, Joe D CPPS a lot of times, and so on and so forth. So we have folks that keep coming every year, but then I'm very much so like, I want to learn more about this, and I'll just reach out to them like, hey, it would be great to do a seminar together, and because now you're doing a number of different things. I'm learning, the team's learning, people in the Seattle area, and obviously there's folks flying in from everywhere, but I wanted it to be like, hey, like this is open to everybody. Everybody should be learning here, and it helps position you as well. And I would say our members know that, like, hey, we're always striving to be better at our craft, So it really is. It takes. I think a lot of people are afraid of stuff like that, like just reaching out, like getting a no. I mean, you gotta get used to getting no's. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah.
If you're afraid of getting no's, it's gonna be tough, because it's like, if you don't ask, the answer is no.
Right.
So you're getting a no already, right? So right now, if you're not asking, you're 100% no.
Yeah.
But
you got to get out there. You got to.
You have to. And think about it, what's in it for them. For me back then, I was like, hey, like, I would ask. We talked about negotiating, but I had no idea. So I was like, hey, what it would take for you to come out and do this thing? And sometimes I was surprised that, like, that's it? Okay.
Great.
Sometimes it was like, ooh, that's a lot. And then I'd be like, hey, man, I believe you're worth every penny. Like, we just can't afford that right now. But what if we did this? What if I paid you for the in-staff this much, and then we invited some other coaches and they paid, but I'll actually give you that too.
Right.
And we, it was like, oh yeah, that sounds good. I'm like, I guarantee you I can get 5 to 6 coaches. So I'm pretty sure we can get this. And what happened is, like, I'd also, sometimes I'd bring in people that I had no prior personal relationship with. And then afterwards, it's like that became a person I was connected with. We became friends. I mean, I have so many examples of this, right?
I love that.
In today's day and age, I feel like that is so possible, and there's the downsides of social media, but there's so many upsides of social media.
Oh my gosh, completely.
And it was like just a couple of weeks ago, I was just mentioning it to you, right? A celebrity trainer that's in our network that I've never met, reaches out to me. It's like, hey, I got, somebody's doing a concert in Seattle. Can we come and train? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Right. And then, I mean, which was cool, but it's like afterwards we hang out, connect, like I give some value, and they had a great experience. And it was like, now we communicate. It's like, hey, let's get on a Zoom. Let me help you out with this thing. I mean, like, you can do that, but that is another thing that it can be in your, like, calendar, right? Mm-hmm. I was speaking at a big event with, Jen Gottlieb?
Oh, yeah. I don't know her personally, but I know she is.
But I met her for the first time, and it's like, we're in the green room 45 minutes before, just talking about all types of stuff. Cool. But she was like, yeah, like I basically spend 15 to 20 minutes. This is my calendar. And I go and I comment and I engage with people that I really look up to and I don't have a relationship yet. And I do it all the time, every day.
Right.
and eventually it was like, The Rock shared her thing and messaged her back in the DMs. She's like,
Wow.
what the hell? But it's like, it was a process, right? Like the thing that you want to achieve, you have it in your calendar and you do it with as much presence as possible. Like, this is the thing that I'm doing. And the thing is, and you don't attach some type of worth or outcome to it. I think that's the key, right? Where it's like, I'm going to do this thing because it's taking me in the right direction. And I think it was like, I don't know, like last week I shared this thing. It's like, if you're going into the right direction, don't worry about like the outcome as much, right? Just if you move in the right direction for long enough, like you'll get to where you want to go. And that's that next step thing, right? Where it's just like, I'm going to do the best work that I can. Let's say I'm putting up a post. I'm going to do the best work that I can with this time I have, make it useful, make it valuable, not attached any emotion to how many likes and views and blah, 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 blah it gets. And I'm just going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep doing this thing where my watch and my wallet are attached to who I want to become. And it's like, you look back a year later and you're like, oh shit, look at where I am. Right. And you look at the gap as well as you look at the gain and you look at the gap. Yeah. And it's, but it's hard. I mean,
right.
That's just the reality of it. It's like, if you want to be great at anything, fulfilled, like it's hard work. And if you accept the hard work, it becomes, put it this way, that anxiety around this whole thing that it should be faster and I should already be there and it should be smoother kind of goes away, because what's difficult is scarce and what's scarce is valuable. Like if it's easy for everybody to do, the value loses.
Right. When you put time and effort and good things out there, over time, it will continue to grow. And as you continue to adapt and create better things and all of that. And you're so fun to talk to, because you always are having great ideas. You're always striving to be better, strive to create better things. But if you weren't doing what you are currently doing with coaching and all of that, what would you do?
Ooh, that's a tough question. You know what? I'm gonna I'll give you some of like my ideas of what I think I would be doing.
That's all we can ask for.
Yeah, obviously, like sports is the thing. If it's not like if I could go back, but obviously basketball was, it meant so much to me. That's why I'm getting back into it more. So I do think that there would probably be a part where I'm involved with ball, whether it's coaching, the skills training. Maybe even like an agent. I don't know, but
you'd be great.
But
agent.
Something in basketball. But the other thing too, which I've done even in my younger days, is like fashion. Like I've always loved clothing, and
you have a great shoe collection.
Oh, thank you very much. I could see myself, making shoes, like shoe surgeon type stuff.
Oh my gosh,
right?
So cool.
Because we used to, like, back in the day. This is, again, I have so many stories that sometimes it feels like, people are like, you're making this shit up. I'm like, no, I promise I'm not. But, we had a hip hop band when I was 13, 14 years old.
Amazing.
And we would sell these, we'd have these shirts. And it's like one of my tattoos right here that says loyalty, but there's no Y. And people are like, oh, you spelled it wrong. But this is like actually loyal. If you say it together, loyalty, right? It sounds the same, but it means loyal team. And we'd have like loyalty shirts, and we'd put them out the trunk, and we'd sell them and stuff, and we'd sell out and everything like that. But I always had like a kind of a draw towards design and fashion. I love to draw. I don't draw enough because it's like it.
I just learned that about you.
Yeah, I'm a big.
Show me things that you have drawn.
I'll send you some stuff. I'm more like black and gray, not much color.
Cool.
Love shading. Like even, when I do my whiteboards, when I do vlogs and stuff, like I'll like to draw and doodle and shade stuff, and but I think that gave me, like, my grandpa, before he passed, he taught me how to draw, and I found a lot. It's very meditative for me. I could go draw for 3-4 hours and just be like,
that's so
what
cool.
happened?
You just get lost in it.
And so I think there would be something to do with design. My mom was like, go to, I actually signed up for architecture university.
Oh wow.
But I never went because I was just like, I was hooping. I was
for sure.
Right. But it was, I do think that she had something there, as far as like, he's like, you like lines and design, and you see stuff. So I think that world, the creative world, would definitely be that. But on the other side, and I think, I tell everybody in fitness, like, look, there's coaching and then there's the business of coaching. There's just separate things, right? Because here you have your craft, and then here you have sales, marketing, fulfillment, delivery, systems, leadership, all these different things. I do love entrepreneurship, and I own some real estate, the building that we're in the gym that we're in. And I love the collaboration of things. Like we've leased out the HIITBURN, physical therapy. And like, I love having meetings where, the owner of HIITBURN, Andrew, we're now building a fire and ice. So like a sauna with the cold plunges and an IV. And, to me, it's like, it's this creation aspect of it. It's just like, I love restaurants. I know we've talked before. I'm like, I'm very good at eating food.
Yes.
I'm not great at like supply chain. I'm not like a master chef, but I actually do want to partner in things like a coffee shop and a restaurant that's close to the gym, because I have this kind of idea of, building Vigorville, where it's like all these different businesses that support each other that are symbiotic. Like even inside of our gym now, we have, there's a nail salon and a med spa, which are kind of separate, but they're still complementary.
Sure. And
then we have, physical therapy inside. We have a smoothie bar and they do acai bowls and all that. And then now we have a sports team. We're going to have a fire and ice. We're going to have an IV. And then also we're working on getting a DEXA fit, which is basically VO2 max testing, DEXA scan, which would be another business, but we're all symbiotic. So in one building, you're looking at 7, maybe 8 different businesses that all support, the clientele, and they're very complementary. So, and I didn't want to veer off, but I really, really enjoy that, like the creation part of it. And, I feel that the thing that I'm very good at is storytelling and marketing and content, like the content that educates. So, collaborating on things like that, where it's like, hey, you are an incredible, like you've opened 2-3 restaurants, you're incredible at the food stuff.
Right.
Let's partner, I'll buy the building. Let's put you in there. Let's collaborate it with the gym. And like that type of stuff, talking about it and thinking about it actually lights me up quite a bit. So I know there's quite a few things, but this is how my brain works. Fortunately or unfortunately,
I knew it wouldn't be any other way.
So it's, that type of stuff, my barber that I went to, where for a second, one place became vacant, but then it renewed really, really fast. And I went to my barber and said, look, man, like I will partner with you on this, wow. but here's how we got to do it. And it's like, let's make a high-end barber shop and let's put this in here, and we'll have drinks and we'll have that, and we'll have like, cool. Every week we'll have some live music come in, and it's kind of on the street, so we can make a little mini block party. And, and obviously like we got a renter, so that didn't happen, but that's kind of like where my brain goes, because I think that in essence, I just look at like, if I was living in this like mini city, Vigorville, like what would I want there? That's so cool. How can we build more community, have more of this? And I'm drawn to brick and mortar. I love the online aspect of it, but like, I don't think I'll ever not be a brick and mortar person, because I'm a shake hands, kiss babies, be around people person, it's like, and I love that. Like I love going to charity events. I love, it's just something about that. And I believe that there's, I think we're missing that today, to get people together more. Yep. And there's nothing that I love more. It's like, we have a charity event. It's like, there's a DJ and we got raffles and we're giving away all this stuff. And we got hundreds of people and we raise tons of money. And like, you just look at folks and they're sweating, they're smiling, they're connecting. At our gym, people that never knew each other now are best friends. Like, that's the type of stuff that I think about. Like, how do we create more of that in things that I love? Like, we all like coffee, amazing. We like food, we like sneaks. So I'm like, okay, cool. How can we build that? And I guess I'll finish on a note. If anybody's followed Zingerman's, the Zingerman's business. So Zingerman's this is cool. Like they were a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It been famous, been around for a long time. Did very, very well business-wise. And they had all these systems and customer experience and how they developed their, I would say their staff and their teams. And what they then started doing, they kind of went horizontal in a way. That they were like, hey, you're an incredible baker, right? Why don't we partner up? You own 51% or more of the business, and then we teach you all the back end. We kind of cool. like run it. And then, now there's the bakery. Now there's this, now there's that. And it went from, I think that the deli it did like 5, 6, 7 million or something like that. But now it's like a 50, 60, $70 million business, and they teach their systems and everything
Cool.
else. And that idea, you know, where they went like, we do something exceptionally well, you do something exceptionally well, but like this thing you don't do that well, let's partner up and we'll enhance the thing that you're doing. You know, I love that, right? And I've done some of that in business in my life, and I definitely want to do more of that, is this whole collaboration part of it. It's like, hey, here's what I'm exceptionally good at. I'm not good at this. What if we join forces and it's like 1 + 1 = 5, right?
That's so cool.
So,
I mean, the sky's the limit with you. There are so many different directions that you could go, but it's cool to hear, even outside of fitness. I mean, you have so many interests, and that's incredible.
I mean, the thing is, the tough thing about it is like when, you know, you ask that question, my brain goes a lot of places. But I would say my really, really big mission, and we talked about it kind of off the mic, was, you know, I don't want to go and spread and do like all these vigor gyms that I'm managing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you put your focus on one and I'm like, make this the best possible. And we have the one in Slovenia, but I'm very hands off. Like my brother, my friends run it. They do an exceptional job. I mean, we're kind of the first gym of its kind, and here we are 17 years later, you know, doing our thing. But it's teaching all of those things, whether it's through, you know, the education of, you know, the courses and the workshops that I do and the free content that I'm putting out. And then, you know, I just wrote a book that's hopefully going to be out in October, and that is all around like how to be successful as a fit pro. And like, there's this concept, but then going into a licensing model and going like, hey, we've built what I believe is the best training and business system combined that has a hard sprinkle of unreasonable hospitality, because I love the restaurant industry. It's like, and I want to give this to any coach so that they can be really successful as a gym owner, whether you got 1,000 square foot space or 20,000 square foot space. And that's kind of like one of the next things. It's like, I do, you know, that saying, as corny as it may be, is the meaning of life. The purpose of life is to find your gift. The meaning of life is to give it away. Right. And I feel that like, I want to continue to get better at my gift, and I want to continue to give it away through, you know, things that are free, but then also things that like, all right, if you want to be involved and, you know, if you want to learn the systems, here's the courses, the workshops, if you want to train with me online, okay, here's going to be the programs and the app. And if you want to, you know, learn everything on the back end and get support, like here's the license. And that's, I mean, you know, that's the rest of my life type of work.
Absolutely.
Right. I'll never run out of stuff to do.
No.
That's for sure.
And it's cool to see where you have been, where you are now, and all of the amazing things coming your way. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
So where can people find you?
Okay. So on IG, I share a lot of kind of like go here, go here, go here. So that's at Luka Hocevar, LukaHocevar. And then if you put Luka Hocevar into YouTube, you'll find my YouTube channel. LukaHocevar.com is where the education, like where the workshops, the courses for fit pros are. And then if you're in the Seattle area, the gym is vigorgroundfitness.com. And my podcast is the Vigor Life Podcast. You can find it on Spotify and iTunes. And it's very coach-centric. Cool. Although we've definitely brought in a lot of different people. I would say if you ask me like, who is it for, just one audience, I'd say it's definitely very, very coach-centric. And that's kind of like where I'm leaning towards.
Love it. Oh, Luka, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. This is, I mean, come on now. It's always the best time with you. So
much fun. And now we're going to go train. We're going to eat and go about our lives.
Yes, sir. Let's
right.
go.
Thanks, Luka.
My pleasure.
And scene. Oh my gosh. Good job.